All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic. And this was the first race we missed all year, Jordan. I'm at my home in Denver, Colorado. You are successfully, somehow, you still got invited to this wedding that we talked about at the end of last week's episode. You are in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm sure you did. I'm sure you were a great best man and a wonderful friend to those people. Is that right?
I actually was. I actually saved the day on a couple of occasions. I actually was. I don't want to say I'm a hero, but if you want to call me a hero, you're welcome to.
I'm sure that's the case. Well,
There
speaking
really
of
was
heroes,
actually, but okay.
Whoever filled Austin Cindric's car up with a full tank of fuel is today's hero, because or you could just say the GOAT, the GOAT, not a GOAT greatest of all time, but the GOAT in a negative way is whoever did not fill Ryan Blaney's car up all the way, because what a turn of events here. Not expecting this track to produce a new winner that we hadn't seen yet this season. Not, we're, it's the typical people, right? And, next thing you know, we have Austin Cindric suddenly in the playoffs, breaking an 85 race winless streak, his second career win after he had won the Daytona 500. What just happened here, Jordan? How did this? What is going on?
I don't know. It's so weird to reconcile the fact that Austin Cindric is the only Penske driver with a points-paying win this season. Not Joey Logano, not Ryan Blaney, who each of whom won the last two Cup championships, and Logano is very much on the playoff bubble, and this win doesn't help his case at all. It's surprising to say the least. And we wrote about in The Athletic this week. We basically both said the same thing. Who's our picks? Who's our long shots? This isn't a track that this is no. Usual suspects all the way. Stay away from the long shot picks. This isn't going to happen. What happens? And this thing is, it's not like he looked back into this. I mean, Ryan Blaney obviously ran out of gas, and that helps. And Bell had his engine issues, but it's not like there was this wild set of circumstances. It's not like he used this crazy strategy. Like he won this race because he had speed. Like he was performance based, and he qualified well, raced well, ran up front all day. They used strategy to their advantage, and he took advantage of other people's failures. Good for him, and kudos for having an all around great weekend. I am blown away that he won this race. I would never have thought. I could pick 15 other guys I think I would have picked before him probably, and that's maybe being generous. I'm just blown away that he certainly did it, and he throws the playoffs into a blender, because when you look at the playoff picture and what this means going forward, there are some really, really big names that are very much in real danger of missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, look, Penske, when you looked at the long run speed from practice, the 10-lap averages, they were 1, 2, 3. And so you thought, okay, they have fast cars. And at the end of this race, after Christopher Bell had his engine issue, look, Christopher Bell was the fastest car. Let's not get that mistaken. If not for an engine issue, we're talking about probably Bell ends up passing Blaney. Bell wins this race, and Bell he already won Phoenix. And this track is the closest to Phoenix that we've seen so far. And so all of a sudden we're like, oh, Bell, championship favorite. Oh, if Bell gets to the Final Four, watch out, everybody. Right. And instead, Bell's like the afterthought, because, he finished 7th. He milked it to the end thanks to Truex kind of helping him still get a top 10. But it looked like it was going to be a Penske 1-2. So it was going to be like, okay, Blaney, hey, here's, if he gets back to Phoenix again, because he didn't win last year, but he did good enough to win the championship. And, hell, those Fords are coming on, Penske. And then, he runs out of fuel with the white flag. Cindric wins instead. This was a race where I was definitely going to try to take something from it and wonder if it would translate to the championship. This New Hampshire coming up, right? Next month. But, or maybe is it this month? I don't even know when New Hampshire
It's in a couple of weeks. It's actually in late June now.
Okay, gotcha. So anyway, but now it's like, well, I mean, I'm not going to think that Austin, yes, he's in the playoffs, but I'm not like, oh, he's going to make the Final Four. So we need to be talking about a championship thing. But he was the third best car. I would have said Bell, Blaney, 1-2. So I don't know. Can you look at this race and what we just watched and translate to the playoffs from here, or are you not really ready to do that? Phoenix specifically.
I think there's things you can take away. I think Bell, the fact, what we said last week about Bell, that this team has speed most weeks. What they don't have is execution. Now it's hard to put on the engine issue on him or the team specifically. It happens. But this is what the issue is with them, though, is like they have all the speed in the world, but they don't always have the results that correspond with that speed. And out of the Ford camp, we've talked about the Penskes, and it seems like they've had more speed lately. They've started to come alive a little bit, especially on the RFK side of things. But Penske a little bit too is showing signs of life, and now they're coming forward a little bit. But extrapolating this from what this means in the big picture, I think it means that what we thought, like if Bell gets to Phoenix, he's going to have a really good chance. If Blaney gets to Phoenix, that happens to be one of his best racetracks, and he's going to have a chance. But in a way that this was much a microcosm of Bell's season, this race, this was also a microcosm of Brian Blaney's year. Like, again, fast cars, most weeks. They haven't executed well recently. They've had a lot of bad luck. They haven't performed up to their expectations, and today's a perfect example of that. It's hard to say that this is a failure by any means, and you start pointing fingers, but they were the only car to run out of fuel if I'm not mistaken. And that's costly. And either they didn't get enough fuel in the car or they miscalculated when to stop because they stopped before everybody else. This was a race they should have at a minimum left here with a second or third place finish. Instead, they're leaving with a 24th. Like, you can't have that. And I know he's comfortable enough in the point standings, but he's 12th though. That's way too low for that team and driver. Like, they should be much higher. And frankly, they should have some wins by now, and they don't. And this was a team that earlier this year was atop the point standings for a week, and it was very much in the mix. And they were grinding out results. And now it's just like everything that's going wrong can go wrong. That to me is a big takeaway from this: of why can't this team put together races consistently where they get good finishes and they're in the mix and that kind of thing? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's, again, I was really surprised that they ran out of fuel, because I didn't hear anything over the radio that gave there any indication whatsoever from anybody I was listening to. Fuel was not an issue.
Nobody was ever saying, make sure to save for me here. Hey, we need, even something like, overtime, let's just save a little bit just in case. Nobody said that. But I don't know if you saw on the FS1 post-race show, but Larry Mack was almost late getting back there, because I think he said, if I heard correctly, he had gone back and watched the final pit stop, and it sounded like he said Blaney's team only took 1 can of fuel where everybody else was taking 2. So if that's possibly correct, maybe they just thought, hey, we only need 1 can.
Well, they obviously didn't. They needed more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were almost 1 mile away, basically. But yeah, I mean, I think if you only take 1 and you're like, well, maybe we should tell them to save a little bit or something. I don't know, but yeah, boy, he sure was pissed on the radio though when they
should be though. Like, this just happens so much with this team. Like, I would be frustrated too. And why shouldn't you be? Like, you had this race in the bag. The guy that had the fastest car handed it to you and said, hey, we got an engine issue, and we're going to slide back. Here you go. All you got to do is make it to the finish. And they fell a lap short in a race where nobody else had any problems.
Man, I tell you what, prior to that, when Bell pitted late, I think he had 18 lap fresher tires, and he's coming up through the field. He's picking people off. He makes so much ground on Blaney so quickly. But then he gets to Blaney and he can't make the pass, right? And they had this sort of classic, the next gen duel, right, where it's just all about trying to take people's air away and side draft and try to drag them back, and who has the preferred lane and all this stuff. And it was pretty competitive for a while there. It still felt like, to me, Bell was eventually going to get Blaney. Did you think that? Oh, I can't hear you, Jordan. Did you mute yourself? Yeah, I think you muted yourself, Jordan.
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, there you are. You're back.
No, I don't know. I did not touch anything and not do anything. So technology is wonderful.
I'm going to assume it was a blessing from the tech gods to just mute you out of nowhere. That makes me happy. So thank you, tech gods.
The same people who set up my audio equipment obviously, calculated Ryan Blaney's fuel mileage today. So
that's yourself. Didn't you set up your audio equipment?
Touche. Okay. I thought Bell was going to get him. Bell just had the faster car, and he really did a good job of being aggressive when he needed to be, but being patient and picking and choosing his spots well. And it seemed like he was just kind of setting him up, but he wasn't really forcing the issue like he needed to. There were some opportunities there where he could have raced Ryan really hard and maybe kind of put Ryan in a bad spot. But it's like, okay, can't quite clear him here. We're gonna regroup here and push him, and go another time. That's what it felt like. And I thought eventually Bell's speed was going to wear Blaney out. I just didn't think Blaney could match him.
Yeah, I agree. So again, it's funny how quickly the narrative changes there on all this stuff. I mean, you look at like the Denny Hamlin bracket challenge, and a bunch of people thought, wow, they made pretty good picks today, right? Because, for instance, the Blaney thing, he was about to win that race. Instead, he loses. He's eliminated in the bracket challenge by Noah Gragson. Like what? Martin Truex Jr. eliminated by Austin Dillon. Truex, the number 2 seed. I had him winning the Denny Hamlin bracket challenge. He is out in round 1. John Hunter Nemechek beats Alex Bowman by 1 spot. They finished 27th and 28th. Alex Bowman, the 8th seed, is eliminated. Austin Cindric was the 20 seed. He came in 20th in points. He eliminates Bubba Wallace. And then another minor upset. Joey Logano, number 17 seed, beats number 16 seed Chase Briscoe. I don't know if you've looked at your bracket yet. Do you know? I went 12-4, but obviously I had some tough ones here, including being eliminated. My bracket busted in week 1. So
I have not actually gone through and counted. I had Bowman advancing. I'm just doing a quick thing in my head here really quick, and I apologize. Riveting radio. I had Bubba Wallace over Austin Cindric. Obviously, that was wrong. I did have Blaney over Gragson.
Who's your final 4? Can you tell me?
Yeah, it is Hamlin, Reddick, Chase Elliott, and Chris Buescher.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have wait, you had Reddick? Hamlin?
Reddick?
Yeah, I had Hamlin
Buescher.
and Reddick also, but then I have Truex and Byron.
Okay.
So you have Elliott. You have Elliott beating Byron in that.
I do, and it came down to consistency, and the same reason why I didn't put. I know it's gonna be weird because Larson's in the near the top of the point standings, but I just consistent to me. Elliott's been running so well week in and week out, just kind of grinding out really good top 10 finishes. They don't have a lot of issues. That to me over this thing was the standout.
Well, and who's your champion?
Hamlin.
Denny? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought about picking Denny, but I didn't want to be cliche and just go with the number 1 seed. Although having my number 2 seed
I was gonna say maybe you should have rethought that a little bit.
Pretty dumb.
It's okay to go chalk sometimes, my friend.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Denny could be out. You never know what happens. And this, honestly, though, even though this is not the real bracket challenge that NASCAR is going to have next year, this actually got me more excited for that today, because obviously the broadcast wasn't talking about any of this, right? But imagine as these things were happening today, these upset type moments like Truex, instead of it just Truex having a problem, flat tire, it was, oh my gosh, number 2 seed Martin Truex Jr. is down on the ropes. And look at number 31 seed Austin Dillon. He's having the best race of his season. He finishes 6th. Like, that would have been such a, you add these storylines in, and with the upsets going on, I think that just makes me more excited and just sort of reaffirms why this is a good idea. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would have really made it more fun.
I actually was paying much more attention today to some drivers that I normally wouldn't. If guys are running 20th or 30th, and sometimes they fall off your radar really easily. But when Josh Berry had his incident, I was like, oh, wow. Because I had Josh Berry, I think, beating Kyle Busch in the first round. I had to go back and look. But I was like, oh, wow, okay, Berry, oh, man, that's going to suck because he's been on a good run lately, that kind of thing. And then when Kyle Busch has his issue, I'm like, oh, wow. And then it doesn't matter. It's just, there's all sorts of things. I was paying attention to Todd Gilliland today because I wanted to see if he could get, where he stacked up with Christopher Bell. And then Bell had his engine issue late. I'm like, oh, man, if he doesn't make it to the finish here, he's out. And then Gilliland's going to move on. It added more storylines to this in a race that I think for most of it, 80, 90% of it was just kind of like shrug your shoulders.
Right.
It added another layer to it. And the fact is that this will be sold because this is a TNT creation, during TNT races, during the summer, like this is going to matter. Like they're going to talk about this.
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, you had, storylines that could have come close to upsets, like Justin Haley ends up finishing ninth today. If not for Denny finishing 11th, that's a 32-1 upset, right? And then you had Carson Hocevar going against Keselowski today. Hocevar gets an 8th place finish. Keselowski was 3rd, but that could have been an upset in the making, right? So, and then you mentioned, the Barry Kyle Busch one, they were up against each other and they finished last and second to last. So somebody was probably going, oh man, like I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
I was looking at I had Truex going out in the second round, so I'm feeling really good about myself right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting just to see how this will have an effect on it. So we'll see how that plays out, but let's talk about some of those incidents that got us there in the first place. The Larson versus Busch thing. What was your take on that? To me, it's like they're racing for 7th at the end of the stage, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, they collide coming off the corner, and it looked like Kyle Busch took kind of some exception to that. After Larson came up and hit him a little bit, they had contact. So Kyle Busch is like, I'm going to pinch Larson down here as much as I can entering the corner. But that, Larson couldn't take enough of an angle through the corner, and all of a sudden he spins out. I don't know, people I think want to put it on Larson for initiating the contact, but Kyle Busch also really, really tried to pinch him down there. So Kyle Busch can say, well, I got taken out of the race here, blah, blah, blah. He got loose, he wrecked, but he also could have given him more room, probably. I'm thinking.
And he should have, because if you're Kyle Larson, you're okay. I know we're going to you're theoretically locked into the points. If you get a waiver, you're in the playoffs, right? We'll get to that in a minute. But so you can afford to be that aggressive, or you can afford to race that way. Kyle Busch cannot. He needs every single point he can get, especially with Austin Cindric winning today, because that really muddies the waters. Like, you can't afford to be running like this. And if you're Kyle Busch, you've had a year where really inconsistent. You haven't had a lot of speed in your race cars. Performance hasn't been there. But guess what? They unloaded fast at Gateway, qualified well, was running in the top 10. This is setting up to be a good day for you. Like, it's not going to be a winning day, but it's a good day. It's something to build off of, give you some points, move forward. You're going to get some stage points, by the way. All of these things that you need to do if you're going to get in the playoffs, if you can't win a race. And you instead get involved in this, and whether he's to blame or not, it's a racing thing. I probably best way to describe it. Like, you just got to be smarter. Like, you just have to realize the situation and what potentially could happen here, and say, you know what, I'm going to give up the spot because I'm going to give up a point, but it's worth it in the big picture because I'm going to lose the battle, but I'm going to win the war.
Well, to your point, Kyle Busch came into today 14th in the standings. He's now 17th outside the playoffs. I mean, it's one thing to be like, all right, yeah, they're not running great this year, but to miss the playoffs, Kyle Busch, that's not something I would have thought. But as it stands now, because Austin Cindric is 18th in points and Daniel Suarez is 19th in points. Those are two people that have wins. You vault them up. Joey Logano and Kyle Busch are both outside the playoffs still at the moment. And it's not crunch time yet, but I mean, we're
getting there.
To get that way. Now you could argue and say, well, I mean, geez, I don't know. Chase Briscoe, is he going to be able to hold on with the SHR stuff? We'll talk about that. But, it's not like I don't see a lot of drivers that are going to be falling out or suddenly, are up too high, and you're like, I can't really see that guy staying there. Not to pick on him, but like last year when Michael McDowell was hanging in the top 16 for a while all summer, you're going, well, I don't know if they're really, are they going to fall out at some point? It seems like they're going to. So you don't really have a guy like that at this moment. Again, aside from Briscoe, who's been overachieving, but it's not like he's super high up there. So
he's on the wrong side of the cut line right now.
He's not, though.
Yeah.
Kyle Larson is not currently in the playoffs. Do you want to talk about this now, or do you just want to talk about this later? Do you want to say this to the end? What do you want to do?
It's up to you. Whatever you want to do. You call the shot on this one.
I think there's still more to talk about from this race first. So it's going to be an exhausting thing to talk about anyway. So
you get so worked up about this.
No, I'm not this week. I'm not. Just
You're
watch.
so
So
but to your point though, there are quite a few big names, and you look at this, and before the year, I don't think either of us really thought that Kyle Busch and Joey Logano was going to be in this position, though there were warning signs that they were trending in the wrong direction going into this year, and that there was reason to think, hey, maybe not everything's not right. But we say all this, and neither of us in a million years would have said, hey, Austin Cindric is going to win Gateway today, right? So my point being, like, we don't know. Like, we really don't. Like, we can pretend and sit here, we feel confident about things, but somebody could roll up to Sonoma next week and pull off a win. Michael McDowell could go there and win that race. He's a great road course racer. He's buried in points, but he could go to Sonoma and turn his season around and with a win. Like, the way this is the setup, and this is the beauty of this format, is winning is everything. And I think it's great when we have moments like Austin Cindric winning, because it reminds us, like, it's cool to have the unexpected, Cinderella upset and that kind of thing. And it's great. And it underscores the fact that you don't know what's going to happen on a week-to-week basis. And upsets are going to happen through the course of the year. And we could sit here and talk about, well, these guys are in danger and this and this. And I don't know, but we just saw what can happen and how quickly everything can be thrown into a blender.
I think it's a great point, because you kind of get sucked into this mentality, especially early in the year, right? When Hendrick and Joe Gibbs Racing had combined to win every single non-super speedway race in a pretty, few months into the year. And you're like, well, I mean, you sort of get that F1-esque mentality where you're like, all right, well, it's going to be this handful of people that can win it. And outside a few guys, that's really it. And, this out of nowhere type surprise is quite refreshing, as you said, because you're like, oh yeah, wait a minute. and again, it wasn't a fluke.
No.
He got gifted it when the two best cars had something happen to them, but he was still going to be the third best car. He was running up there all day. He was fast in practice. He was qualified to be up there. You know what I mean? So I mean, that is a pleasant. It's kind of like not unlike the Eric Almirola New Hampshire.
That's it.
A few years ago, where, I mean, that was the race where I think some guys, the JGR guys, wrecked on the rainy
lap one,
part of the race. And so, it's not like all the best cars were in the field, but he still dominated that race and won that race straight up, right? So you kind of need those every once in a while to be like, oh yeah, right. Remember, anything can happen. I know it's cliche to say, but it does happen. So, yes, that said, aside from, I still am not going to go to New Hampshire and think, well, this will be a wild card race. But again, you can't rule it out. I need to be more careful in these previews that we do when we're making our picks each week, not just be so dismissive of like, yeah, this no fluke's going to win.
Well, I said the same thing. Gateway is not a track where upsets happen. I said, like, I wrote that to that effect, like almost word for word. Like, oh no, there's no chance. I even listed out like basically every Hendrick and Gibbs guy, and I think I even threw in a couple of RFK. I think I threw in both RFK drivers. Like, I threw out like 12 names of like, this is a 12. Pick these 12 guys. Ignore the rest of the guys. It isn't happening. And like, shows you what we know. But that's the beauty of this, though.
I was getting all ready to screenshot what I wrote about Bell winning and tweet it out after the race and be like, like the little the emoji with the person where they're like putting their hand out like this, like not like the shrug, but just like the told you kind of thing. I don't even know what does that emoji even mean?
You're talking to the wrong guy. When it comes to emojis and anything like that, that is not my wheelhouse.
Do you not use emojis?
I use emojis, but I don't really understand like what all of them mean. Like, there's the one that's like the melting sun, like the guy, like the melting, like melting. I don't quite.
One of my favorite.
But I don't always understand how people are using it. What is like
their face?
Their face is that it's melting, but I don't understand the connotation always of like how it's used, because it feels like it's sometimes used in different ways, and I don't quite understand.
Same as the upside down smiley face. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like isn't this great? It's almost like the same thing as the swirly eyes in some ways.
Okay, this is too much. There needs to be a class for this.
Like, isn't that just great? Kind of thing. That's like what the melty face is to me.
Okay, like, that makes sense. Thank you.
Isn't that just great?
This is a tutorial. I appreciate this.
I didn't mean to get on a sidetrack, but I'm not
this is great.
One means, except I would have used it to tweet that. But anyway, I was not able to do that because I lost my pick loss. So sorry if anybody followed my picks. Jordan, big news this week.
Big news.
SHR, you had already said this was happening, but it was official. They are shutting down after this year. Our colleague Madeline Coleman on the F1 side checked Gene Haas right away. They had a statement. Nope, still going on the F1 side. No change over here. NASCAR, though, gone after this. So what do you make of this, and what happens now to SHR?
Really, really unfortunate. Like, there are so many great people that work there, front-facing employees like drivers, crew chiefs, but a lot of behind-the-scenes people. Just a really great group of people over there. Hardworking, gritty group. And they've been dealt a bad hand in a lot of respects because they've sometimes it felt like at least recently, they were kind of fighting with one hand tied behind their back. They didn't have a lot of forward manufacturer support. Their deals kind of gone away. I wrote about this on The Athletic this week. There's just really a lack of leadership from the top down. And I feel really, really bad for a lot of people over there. There's a lot of great people who are now, searching for jobs and wondering about their futures. The only good thing about this out of this whole situation is, that the 4 teams that are going away are going to find, there's going to be 4 teams on the grid next year. It's not like they're just going away. Thankfully, because of the charter and everything, there's going to be 36 cars in the grid next year. That's a positive. So you would hope that a lot of these people can find jobs. And it sucks because you look at this team, like, how many times this year, Jeff, have you and I talked about, oh man, Noah Gragson, Josh Berry, Chase Briscoe, man, look what they're doing. SHR, man, they're running well. Intermediate tracks, short tracks. Like, they've done a really, really great job this year, like, of just overachieving. And it really sucks that they're, now too. Like, I guess it's positive, like they have more time to find jobs, but you're working your butt off. You're fighting trying to push this boulder up a hill, and you're doing a really good job of doing it. And oh, by the way, sorry. I feel really bad for them, and it's unfortunate that SHR is going away. And there are numerous reasons, and and you can talk about leadership, and I pointed that out. You can talk about the economic climate, and there's a discussion to be had there, and I understand that. But this isn't supposed to happen. Like, this team is supposed to be here, and they were supposed to be this rock going forward, and they're gone. And championship teams that have won 2 championships since 2011 aren't supposed to go away. Only Penske and Hendrick have won more championships during that span. It's just, it really is unfortunate. And then I wonder too, like, Tony Stewart hasn't been around a lot lately on the NASCAR side. He's doing other things, and that's fine. But you wonder, like, is NASCAR really going to see Tony Stewart much anymore? Like, and I wonder about that. And that's NASCAR's loss. That Tony Stewart's not around is a blow to NASCAR. And when Tony Stewart's around, it's better. Like, he's a great quote. He's a personality. He's a name. Like, his team took his identity, and his way he built his team was built in his image. Like, it's going to suck that he's not going to be around theoretically probably anymore. It's really unfortunate for so many reasons.
Yeah, honestly, I hadn't really considered that side of it. I think you're right, though, because what reason will he really have to come back, right? And to make regular appearances or speak to the media and things like that. And yeah, that is definitely a loss. I do feel like, I listened to Kevin Harvick's podcast this week, talking about the SHR situation, and his point about, like, there's about to be like a war basically for all these people. And so if ever there's a time, look, losing your job sucks. And especially if you've been there for a long time, you've invested emotional energy in this place, and this is your livelihood and all this stuff. But if there's ever a time in NASCAR history to be looking for a job, wow, this is probably it, because you heard it on DBC this week too, with Chris Rice talking about, people, they'll have people come down that don't know how to turn a wrench basically, and train them at this point, because they are so desperate for people to work and work hard. And if you are proven that you know how to work on these cars or do whatever for these teams, the other teams are all, it's now going to be a bidding war in some, because it's not just like, okay, we need people, but you're also like, we can't let this team get those people. We can't let our competitors get these people too. So it's twofold that drives up the interest.
Oh yeah.
And you heard about Rodney Childers talking about on DJD Reloaded, There's going to be people, and they're looking for job interviews and stuff this week, right? And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there, and to see if these people can remain at Stewart-Haas for the rest of the year, because some people might just be like, all right, yeah, I could stick this year out, but also I could go to Gibbs right now. I could go to 2311 right now. I could go to Hendrick right now, whoever is doing the hiring. And so it's like, and I think there's a real concern. Are these SHR teams going to have enough people to race out the year? I mean, you heard Chase Briscoe talking about it this week. Dustin Albino did a great story on NASCAR.com where he talked to 3 of the drivers and Childers. And it's like, Briscoe's on the bubble. He's overachieved this year, right? From what we thought they were going to be. And it's like, yeah, how's he going to stay up there if they start to lose people and then therefore lose speed? So there's a lot at play here, but just very unfortunate too, because you hear Kevin Harvick talk about, managerial wise, if he didn't think it would have been that hard if they just restructured a couple things, got a couple people who were empowered to make decisions and were able to do things. And he thought it would have been a fairly quick turnaround. It sounded like. So, man, that's, again, like, to have a 4-car team just go away like that. It's pretty stunning, but you could also see it coming. And I think just also Gene Haas, him, I'm not saying he's the classic eccentric billionaire, but he's borderline that way, right? Where he just sort of,
you're not saying he's not.
He does things sort of like on whims, where you could see it, where he's just like, yeah, I don't really want, I'm kind of tired of NASCAR, right? Like, whatever. And that's it. So he's obviously losing millions and tens of millions of dollars by selling these charters the way he did, because he's selling them for less than market value. But instead of selling them a couple off at a time, or, waiting a year, it's just like, nah, we're going to be done.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit and say that this was like a whim, because this has been going on for some time. I mean, there was a lot of conversation last year about SHR's future. Were they going to sell a charter? Were they going to sell 2 charters? And this has been an ongoing thing. And it seemed, it didn't happen. They decided to stay at 4 teams for this year. But even we all knew going into this year, like, the writing was very much on the wall. Like, they obviously had conversations last year. We knew going into this year, like, this was one of, and I think I may even said this, like, this is probably one of the number one storylines to follow this year is Stewart-Haas Racing and what happens with them, because things are changing over there. And I've said for a while publicly, like, the Stewart-Haas Racing, we know going into this year was going to be very, very different in 25, because we knew either they were going to have a big driver change, they were going to either downsize, or they were going to go away completely, or they were probably going to change manufacturers because their deal with Ford was up. Like, there was big changes on the horizon, and everything was kind of lining up. Like, okay, if you guys want to downsize and you truly want to do this, as you've talked about, now is the time to do it. It sucks, but you're right, and I said the same thing. Is like, at least these people have an opportunity to go somewhere else. These teams aren't necessarily just evaporating. Like in years before the charter agreement, if a team closed the doors, it's like, oh man, you may be down 1 car next year. Like, no, there's going to be 36 on the grid next year, and there's a lot of talented people over there. And I'll be interested to see what I wish I could read the contracts, because then how some of these contracts are worded is like, oh no, you're committed here through the end of the year regardless, or is there is there something in the contract of, hey, if there's a big change, you're all of a sudden a free, you're free to go negotiate and do whatever you want. I don't know. It's going to be interesting though, but depth is a really big thing already in this industry for teams, and how to do that. And when you announce a decision like this, guess what? Your depth is going to get whittled away even more. It's going to be fascinating to see how Stewart-Haas Racing handles the rest of the year, especially come late summer and the fall, when really people are starting to line up things and really look ahead to next year. It's gonna, and it's just, I keep saying this word, it's just unfortunate, because there are so many great people up there who have done really incredible things this year, despite all of the adversity and all of the challenges they've had thrown at them by leadership that doesn't really seem to be caring about wanting to be in this anymore.
All right, Jordan, it's time to talk about waivers. I've been dreading this all week long, I'll be honest, because I think everybody collectively, whether it's on social media, people in the industry, whatever, everybody's tired of talking about. Nobody wants to be talking about this.
Sure.
This is so stupid that we're talking about this, actually. But we absolutely have to talk about it. And here's why. It's a very real issue. All week long, I've seen so many people speculating NASCAR knows what they're going to do. They're just stringing this out for attention, for clicks. I'm sorry to tell you guys, that is not the case. The reason that this has not been announced yet, what they're doing, is because they don't know. And not only do they not know, but there is serious consideration to not giving Kyle Larson a waiver.
Serious.
I'll say that again. Serious consideration to not giving Kyle Larson the waiver. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't do it. I would view it as cooler heads will prevail, perhaps. But there's factually, unquestionably, people within NASCAR in the competition department that are against the waiver for Kyle Larson, and discussions are still going on. That is why we do not know. It's not because, oh, they're just making it dramatic.
Nope.
They're just stringing them along. That is not the case. They are weighing to actually whether to actually do this or not.
Yeah. And there is no rush to make a decision. Like I think you may see a decision sooner rather than later, but there isn't a drop dead. We have to have this done within a week or two. Like, you can run this out for honestly the whole summer if you wanted to. And as you said, like, there's a very real possibility that he doesn't get a waiver. I don't think people understand the severity of this. Like, they kind of shrug it off like, oh, this is just NASCAR being NASCAR. They'll give it to him eventually. Like, no, there's a very real possibility that this could happen. And I don't think I have an idea of what I think is going to happen. I think ultimately he will get a waiver, but I would nowhere is that a guarantee. Nowhere even close. It's very much up in the air and undecided at this point.
So, I to me, I'm not even sure where to go with this, because it's so incredibly disappointing. And it's not because, like, Larson aside, right? We get on here and we are very passionate about NASCAR, right? About things that affect NASCAR for good or bad. Does this help NASCAR? Does this hurt NASCAR? All the things we view things through is the prism of, is it good for the sport, bad for the sport? I cannot imagine many things, at least decisions that NASCAR could make, that would be worse for the sport than this. Your arguments last week obviously resonate with NASCAR. They obviously feel the same way.
They listen to the podcast. They're big fans.
Well, what you were saying last week obviously carries, I'm not saying it
carries weight. Yeah.
What
it's obvious.
They feel the same way. Obviously, some people within NASCAR feel the same way as you.
Yeah,
even
big
as
fans.
I thought, as ridiculous as that sounded, and as absurd as that was, they still feel like that, right? So I could rail against this and say this is the stupidest thing. This is worse than putting Jeff Gordon in the chase, all this stuff, right? But my more overriding emotion is I feel this is just incredibly disappointing that this has even gotten to this point, that this would even be considered. Because let's talk about what the ramifications from this decision would be. Let's just think big picture for a minute about what happens if they actually go through with this and say, we're not going to give him the waiver. So, first of all, you have a guy, he's moved up to second in the points today. He's 21 points out of the lead. Larson could very, very well win the regular season championship. And so all summer, with every race he wins and every week that he's in contention for the regular season championship, you're talking about how this guy is having perhaps the best season of anybody. And is not going to be a part of the playoffs. Good luck explaining that one to your new Netflix crowd. Good luck with that one. Well, wait a minute. What? Huh? The points leader? He can't make the playoffs? No. He can't even make it. Well, what if he wins more races? No. What if he wins all the rest of the races? Nope. No, he can't.
Well, he shouldn't have skipped a race.
But this is what you're going to have to explain to people. So number one, it's going to be a topic from this, right? Number two, then you get to the playoffs themselves. Larson is the number 5 team is obviously championship eligible.
Yeah.
And he's likely going to make a deep run with the number 5 team. He currently on the points report that they put out, he went from 17 playoff points to 0 playoff points because he's currently not eligible. But the number 5 team has the 17 playoff points, and they'll get more based on where the number 5 car finishes in the standings, which, by the way, the number 5 car in owner points is still the points leader. So throughout the playoffs, you'll have people looking at this saying, well, Larson would have been in the Final Four. Larson would have been running for the championship. Larson this. So your entire playoffs is going to be overshadowed by this nonstop conversation that dates back to a rainy afternoon in May. You're also going to have a lot of angry people. People who are, you can already see them on social media. They're saying, I'm not going to watch NASCAR for the rest of the year. I'm not going to buy tickets. You're rolling your eyes. I absolutely think that's true. You don't think that's
true? I'm sure there are people, but there's always going to be people who, how many times we hear people say, I am never going to do this again. I'm never going to do this again.
That is so untrue. Look at the Chase Elliott effect that we just saw last year. When Chase Elliott wasn't in the races because of the broken leg, people did not watch. If Larson, if you right now say to all the Larson fans out there, which by the way, he's becoming easily one of the most popular drivers in America.
Well, I said 2 weeks ago, he might win most popular driver this year.
Well, he probably actually will be it if they don't let him in the playoffs, because you will basically martyr Kyle Larson. He will become this figure of like, he is, the man is keeping him down. They are unfairly picking
that's ridiculous.
That's such a absolutely what fans will think.
I'm not saying that. I know that fans are going to say that, and it is such a ridiculous argument to make. The man that is such a ridiculous to make him a martyr.
You don't think that's a valid thing? No. When they've given out waivers to everybody, when they've given out, they gave out waivers to Matt Kenseth, who had no intention to run for the championship and missed the first 3-4 races of the year. They gave him a waiver.
Listen. I'm not going to sit here and debate whether waiver. You know where I stand on waivers. You know where I stand on waivers.
No, I don't. You said last week that he shouldn't get a waiver.
You know when it comes to waivers, I'm stringent.
Are you now saying that he should get a waiver?
No. Can I finish?
I mean, let's hear it.
Well, I was trying to, and you just keep interrupting me. So I am, as I've laid out last year, I'm not a fan of waivers. Like, I'm not a fan of giving one to Bowman. I wasn't in favor of giving Elliott. I sure as hell would have never given one to Matt Kenseth. The Kurt Busch thing, that worked out because he was going through this criminal case and you didn't know where it was going to stand. And it gave NASCAR it's basically kind of like the NFL where you can pay a guy, but he can't participate. That worked out for Kurt Busch. And I understand why they did it that way. That made sense. Would have never in a million years given one to Kenseth. Wouldn't have never given one to Bowman. Would have never given one to Elliott. A driver gets suspended on the racetrack. Sorry. No, you don't get one. I don't like that. We talked about this last week. We have seen this happen before. I'm not a fan of it. Like, if you do something so dumb on the racetrack that earns you a 1-race suspension, sorry, you're done. I don't like that. I think NASCAR is way too friendly with waivers. So no, I don't think, if you want to have that conversation about waivers, that's where I stand. I have made my case about where I feel about Kyle Larson and how this should be. I don't think he should get a waiver. I don't think he deserves it. I think he'll get one. That's fine. And I think next year, the wording and how this is going to be very different than it is now. And there's going to be a lot more things that there's going to be less leeway, shall we say. But no, I don't think, because at the end of the day, this was a choice he made. And I understand how it was, but you knew going into all of this, you knew you had it. You knew if we miss a race, it says you miss a race. The rule is now, I don't care what the rule said 5 years ago. I don't care what the rule said a couple years ago. The rule says now, as clear as day, if you miss a race, you do not start a race, you are possibly ineligible for the playoffs. You have to get a waiver. That's the rule. Whether we like the rule or not, it doesn't matter what the rule was 5 years ago. It doesn't matter what it was for Kenseth or anybody else. The rule is what the rule is now. You knew when you said this, when you set this up, when you said, I'm going to go run the double, okay, you run the risk. And so at the end of the day, that's a choice you make. At some point, isn't there any accountability in all of this? So to sit there and say, oh, he's going to be a martyr, stop. At the end of the day, it was a choice he made. It wasn't like someone came down and oh, this is some horrible misfortune. No, this is what you chose. You chose to go do this, which is great. And NASCAR was willing to work with you on your plan of doing this double. And they would even have held the start of the Coca-Cola 600 if they needed to, up to, I've heard anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So they were willing to work with you. But then when you decided after a 4-hour delay of, hey, you know what, despite everything I said, despite all of the public things I've said about how the Coca-Cola 600 is important to me, that is the priority. We're going to be there. When push came to shove, you made a decision that went against what you had said publicly. No, he's not a martyr. That is absolutely not. That's a horrible way to. If people really think Kyle Larson's not a martyr, the man is against me. The man isn't against you. The man would have been supporting you and was supporting you until you decided to go against what you had said publicly and said, hey, you know what? Despite saying this was my priority, just kidding. Sorry, no, gonna go run Indy.
You and the NASCAR people who agree with you can lock yourselves in a room and yell at each other and shake your heads and say, I can't believe this. All those people are so wrong. But guess what? There's going to be a lot of people who you think are wrong. And those are NASCAR's customers. Those are the people that watch this on TV and pay to go to the races and support the sport. By taking him out of the playoffs because you didn't like that he said something and then he went back on that, and that's not cool. That's not fair. He should have, he
stay to his truth, follow through with what he said.
You're making a decision about your sports championship field based on whether you were mad at somebody for them lying or misrepresenting what their plans were for the biggest race in the world, by the way. Apparently that's not okay. It's not okay to acknowledge that that's the biggest race in the world because NASCAR apparently doesn't like the double as much as the rest of us do. I thought they were all on board with the double. It turns out
they were on the double until the plan changed and until Kyle Larson and company said, hey, yeah, despite what we said, no, they were supportive of the double. You can't sit there and say they weren't. They were up until the point where there was a 4-hour
denying a waiver, which if you deny the waiver, nobody will ever do the double again. Ever. That's the end of it. Right? So how can you say they support the double if they're actively trying to make sure that nobody could do that again? And that if
you're going to do it's very clear. It is very, very clear. If you're going to do the double, the priority from NASCAR's perspective is this is the priority. If you do the double, we are the priority. You are to be here for the start of the race. Sorry if Mother Nature interferes and there's a multi-hour delay. Sorry if you got to get yanked out of the car. When Tony Stewart did the double back in 2000, there was conversations about whether he was going to be able to finish the race or not because he was going to get yanked out of the car. Now, much different apples and oranges, I understand that. But the point is you have to make choices. And there are choices you have to, and I agree about everything you said. And I said this a week ago. I said this a week ago on this podcast about ultimately why I think NASCAR is going to give him a waiver, because it will be a black eye. And you're going to have this conversation. It is going to be legislated every single week, because you could theoretically have a driver win the regular season points championship, win the most races, dominate the series, and not be playoff eligible, and not win the championship or contend for the championship. You're going to have this conversation. That is why ultimately, I believe, my opinion, I think he gets a waiver. Is NASCAR will say, listen, we don't like this. We don't feel good about this. But we also know that it's gonna be a black eye for us, and it's gonna be a public relations nightmare. And that's why I think at the end of the day he's gonna get a waiver. But if you're NASCAR, it's it makes sense. Make them sweat. Make them sweat a little bit.
Why would you even publicly want to go this far anyway? Why would you want to make him sweat? Why wouldn't you want to be like, you know what? Hey, he gave it a heck of an effort. He was doing something that elevates all of motorsports.
I can tell you exactly why. Because he lied to me. Like they sit there and told us that this was the priority. They had sit there. The Hendrick leadership had sat there and told NASCAR, "You are the priority. We are going to be there." Kyle Larson in press conferences. Rick Hendrick said this. They had said over and over again, "If I'm NASCAR, I'm pissed off." Because you had sat there and told us we're the priority. We're the priority. But when push came to shove,
based on your feelings.
If someone lies to me, I sure as hell can. If someone goes back on their word and what they said, yes, I can. If the plan was going to be, we're going to be the priority, and then all of a sudden, sorry, yeah, I can be upset by that because we gave you our understanding of, hey, we're going to give you a waiver. If something happens, there's a plane delay, something completely, out of the realm of your control that interferes with this, that prevents you from being here for the start of the race, we are going to be sympathetic to that, and we are going to give you that waiver. That, from the conversation I've had, that was what the plan was. Well, the plan changed because Hendrick changed the plan. Hendrick decided that when weather interfered with Indy 500, well, we're going to keep them here. That's fine. But then you're now going to NASCAR and you're saying, hey, you know what we said before about this being a priority? Yeah, that's not the case. So they changed the game. NASCAR didn't.
You're a lot angrier than I am this week.
And again, like, I'm not sitting. Larson, give the Larson a waiver. That's fine, and you can have a conversation with the waiver system, it needs to be reevaluated. And I've actually seen some good ideas on social media this week, and I understand. And you're right. They have given out waivers like candy, and it's ridiculous and it's excessive. But like, at some point, I'm an accountability person. Like, there has to be some accountability here of like Hendrick and Larson changed the game. Like, and they went back on what they said. Like, and we're just supposed to be like, sorry. Like, that to me doesn't fly.
Who cares? Like,
accountability matters. Accountability matters.
Some sort of anger about a thunderstorm that 10 years from now, it's not going to matter. Okay. I can tell you, I can just promise you, Jordan, you are on the wrong side of history here. If they do this will go down in NASCAR history as one of the worst decisions ever.
I get all this.
From this will be massive.
I understand this. I laid this out all last week. I get it.
Anybody who supports that and has a part in this decision will be part of this history, similar to, again, how we look at the Jeff Gordon 13th guy in the chase, that people still go, I can't believe that was such a bad thing. Except this, I think, will have more legs because you could legitimately see the sport lose fans over this. You could legitimately drive people away. And that comes back to what I said starting this conversation about why it's sad and disappointing. I don't really care about the Larson aspect of it, okay? Like, if they want to do this, fine. You want to stick it to them, you want to send a message, go ahead. But what I'm worried about is how this affects the sport as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any positives coming from this. I mean, hey, it'll probably get us some clicks on the story about it. Aside from that, it's going to be disastrous. It's not going to be enjoyable for anybody to talk about this over and over and over again. You might as well, Sirius, we both co-host on Sirius every now and then. All these callers are going to the whole rest of the year. Waiver. People are going to, the word waiver is going to be like worse than narwhals back in the day. It's going to be so annoying. I'm already annoyed about it, but here's NASCAR has done this. They've set themselves up this way. I don't know why you'd want to drag it out any further. I'm sad it's gotten to this point. I just think this would be, you talk about blunting all the sports momentum in positive decisions over the years. This just erases so many things. And for what? Because you're mad that somebody lied about what their intentions were? That's what we're talking about here? That's what you're telling me.
Accountability matters.
So just blow the whole thing up because
listen, I'm willing to, like, I would I would love to know, is there some kind of, and I've seen this kind of bandied about a little bit, and this doesn't, I don't want to sit there and say this is what NASCAR's considering. This is just conversations with people, but you'd be wondering if there's some kind of compromise here. Like, we're going to give them a waiver, but there's going to be like a points penalty or something, you know, of some kind of
you talk
minor.
about not the rule. That is not the rule. That is not a rule.
I don't know. Well, I mean, but if you're going to live, but again, like if it's one of two things. Either we're not going to give you a waiver, or you're going to take a points penalty. Like it's.
He already did take a points penalty. He
okay,
lost
but if you want to follow the rule, okay, but if you want to talk about the rule, if you want to follow the rule, then the rule is sorry, you're out of the playoffs.
Unless otherwise authorized, which they authorized everybody. According to Seth Eggert in his chart, they've also authorized 31 out of 35 waiver requests. And the only 4 were like 2 were for, I think, substance abuse. And the other 2 were because people didn't have sponsorship, missed a race, tried out the waiver.
Grain and finger. Yeah.
Everybody else, they've given one. So why, after promoting this, by the way, all over their socials, promoting the double, we're so proud of Kyle Larson. He's doing such great things for NASCAR. And then now it's all turned so quickly.
Because you could say they promoted under false pretenses, because it was promoted the fact that this was going to be the priority. We are on board with this. We support this because we've been told that we are the priority. We know he's going to be here. We know that when we go to our customers and we say, hey, all of our stars in every single race, we mean it. And all of a sudden the game changed. Like we promoted it because we were in favor of it, because we were operating under this premise. And then the goalposts move on us.
Go ahead, do it. Pull the trigger. I mean, you talk about temporary satisfactions.
Do you think they will? If you had a pick right now, do you think they will?
I just think ultimately, surely some people within NASCAR have to realize how detrimental this would be. They should be fining themselves for actions detrimental to stock car racing if they do this. I mean, this is way more detrimental than anything a driver could say. So I would hope people just swallow their pride, say, okay, we don't like that this happened, but we're going to give them the waiver. As you said, if they want to change the rule for next year and make it more clear on what waivers do and what they're okay, that's fine. But I just think to just say denied and he's out of the championship, I just cannot fathom that. But apparently,
I agree.
It could happen. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I think it ultimately, you look at this and you weigh the pros and the cons and you say, did it suck? Yeah. Is it bad? Yeah. But at the end of the day, the fallout from this, if we don't give him a waiver, and what we're going to have to deal with the rest of the year and the potential ramifications that this could be. We talk about Pandora's boxes. This would certainly potentially be that. So I think at the end of the day, he gets the waiver because of that.
I'd like to ask you one more thing before we move on from this. What is Kyle Larson's reaction if they deny the waiver? What does Kyle Larson do?
I don't want to speak for him. I don't know. I mean, are you saying is he gonna rant and rave? Is he gonna leave NASCAR? I don't, is that what you're asking?
How do you think he responds?
I don't know. I mean, when Kyle Larson was out of racing in 2020, there was questions about, could he make a living running dirt racing, and everything. And okay. So, but the end of the day this is the number one form of racing in North America, or, at least the United States. And you're going to get, so if he's so angry and so upset, and I want to be careful because I don't want to put words in his mouth here. So if you're so angry and so upset, you're like, I'm done. I'm just done with NASCAR. I'm going to go run IndyCar, or I'm going to go run whatever. Okay, I get that, but I would imagine you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table, like a lot of money. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't care. Like maybe you made enough, and you're taken care of, and you've got generational wealth. Also, you need to run over here if you want to be this great all around, on the same ledger as Andretti and Foyt. You've got some work to do over here. You've got some big races to win still. And maybe you could still do that and run and everything like that. And that's fine. and you run part-time, but are you going to walk away from all that money and the opportunity to continue to build your resume as the best all-around driver of, well, I don't know, all time or one of them? I don't know. I would be hard to see that happen. And I don't know. I mean, the other question is too is like Hendrick's got a contract with him, and I don't know what that contract is and what he can and can't do. Maybe Hendrick says go, whatever. It is. You don't want to be here, then sorry. And then, I don't know. I would. If it were me, I would have a hard time walking away from that because, winning the Daytona 500, winning the Coke 600, winning these big crown jewel races and winning championships in races and building this big resume up, in addition to all the other stuff you're doing, is great. Now you go run Indy 5, you want to go run IndyCar and make that a career. That's great. You're going to make a good living over there. You're not going to make what you made on the NASCAR side in terms of money, but you go run Indy 500. That's certainly going to go a long way to building your brand in a big, big way. But I don't know. Do you walk away from this? I don't know.
I mean, if it was me, I would definitely be like, screw you guys.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I would be freaking angry. But he's more chill and level maybe. But yeah, I would definitely be like, you know what? Cool. You don't think Indy's important? Well, guess what? I'm going to go run the Indy 500 every year now. Actually, I'm going to go become an IndyCar driver and a sprint car driver. And enjoy. I've already won a NASCAR championship. So, I mean, at this point, Jordan, you talk about him going for history and accolades and things. Is a second NASCAR championship bigger than winning the Indy 500 for your resume?
No,
it's not.
But I will say, if you go run IndyCar, like you quickly, let's just be honest. Let's just be very blunt. If you're an IndyCar driver, you pretty much are irrelevant 11 months out of the year. Like,
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but
well, you know what I mean, though. Like, I mean, my point is like you really are like the sporting public really pays little attention to you 11 months out of the year.
If you're Kyle Larson going to run IndyCar,
but are you Kyle Larson though? If you're just doing you're not doing the NASCAR thing anymore, like,
are you not factoring in how many people came to Indianapolis just to watch this guy? The entire dirt world. A lot of NASCAR people and just motorsports fans in general are huge fans of Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson will bring people with him wherever he wants to go, in my opinion. So it's not just like he's some anonymous dude driving an IndyCar. If he drives IndyCar, people will go follow him and watch him, in my opinion. So
the Indy 500 sells out every single year. Their TV ratings usually do very, very well. Most of the time, people aren't hooked by it. Like Kyle Larson has a following. He has a devout following. That is it going to matter at the end of the day? Is it going to lift IndyCar up to some big name level? I don't think so. Like,
I'm not saying it lifts it up to NASCAR's level, but it certainly gives it a boost. But
sure, maybe for a little bit, short term, we'll see. I think the bigger question is not just what Kyle Larson does. Like, what is the ramifications from Hendrick? Now all of a sudden, like, you've got a Hendrick NASCAR showdown. By the way, in the backdrop of all this is the charter agreement that's in the negotiations that are ongoing. That Hendrick is, from what we are reporting, I think it's fair to say is not happy with. Like, how does that play into all this? You've got NASCAR's top team in a showdown now with the series over their star driver, who's the championship favorite, no longer being championship eligible. Like that to me is the bigger thing.
How about Chevrolet? Where do they stand on this? How about NBC? You go to NBC and you say, hey, guys, just to let you guys know, Larson, the guy that was just got all this huge publicity from the Indy 500, we're actually not going to let him be eligible for the championship because we're mad. So, sorry, guys. Like,
there is a lot of cooks in the kitchen and a lot of people that are going to have. I don't think they're going to influence it per se, but they certainly are going to be in the conversation about what's going on. And Chevrolet is a great one too. Do they look at this and they're like, oof, is there loyalty to NASCAR? And they've been a very loyal partner with NASCAR for, decades. Does that at the end of the day trump everything? I don't know. But that to me though is part of it though. It's not just what Larson does. It's a part of the Hendrick versus NASCAR potential showdown. Which is why at the end of the day, And I go back to what I said. I think he gets the waiver because then all of this is mute. All of this is done with, and it's not a matter. And it doesn't matter, that Larson went and gallivanted and ran IndyCar, for a race. So like it'll just be, it's done. It's over with. We're moving on. We're going to change the rule, whatever. But that to me is why this is ultimately going to go that way.
We're obviously live on YouTube right now, and 83% of the fans in our YouTube chat say that Larson should be granted a waiver. I thought about doing a poll on this on Twitter, but ultimately thought that would, I don't know how would that come across. So I did not do that. But in our chat here, 83% of fans say that he should get a waiver.
Well, I'll mention, I'll tell you what, when I meet with NASCAR executives and help them shape their waiver policy this week, I'll mention that to them. Okay.
I'm sure you and them will just be ranting and saying he's not a martyr. He's not a martyr, and feel very good about yourselves. But
I'm honored that they listen to this podcast and they listen to the voice of reason.
Right. All right. Speaking of percentages and voting, it's time for the Was It a Good Race poll. Unfortunately, Jordan, for you, yet again, I didn't even hardly watch this Coke 600. I knew it was going to be bad. So I'm up 10-6. I've won 7 of the last 8 and 9 of the last 11. So
I'm on a Blaney streak right now. I'm just going backwards.
Okay.
It's been a rough run. But like Blaney, saving myself for the playoffs, going to heat up at the right time. Cruise to a championship.
All right. Good luck to you. So this is a tricky one here because, as you mentioned earlier, I didn't really think most of this race was that great. It was fine, and then you get the battle for the lead late, and then Christopher Bell blows up, and then Blaney runs out of gas, and you have a surprise winner instead. Last however many laps were pretty entertaining. So where is that going to leave people? It feels like something maybe in the 70s or high 60s or something to me. I'm not really sure where to go with it, honestly. But I think I can't really remember another race like this recently where something to compare it to, where you were just like, it's all right. And then it gets really good and just kind of just crazy out of nowhere like this specifically. So I think I'm just going to go 73 and, yeah. What are you saying? Oof, are you thinking?
It just seems high. To me, it was a very weird race in that it was very strategy laden, very early on. And it was like you threw this thing in the oven, you were waiting for it to cook, right? And then all the ingredients to kind of meld together, and it melded together for like the last 30 laps. You're like, all right, here we go. It took a while to get here, but we're here, and this is going to be good. And but I think at the end of the day, the Blaney Bell thing was good, but it was very short lived, and it was almost anticlimactic because it was just getting there. It's like, all right, here we go. This is it. They're kind of jostling now, and it's like, oh, he's got an engine problem. Oh, all right. And then the Blaney fuel thing came out of nowhere, and I think that's part of it too. Is like people were caught off guard. Like it wasn't like kind of fuel strategy races. We're kind of like we know what to expect, and this and that.
Catching him a little bit though in the final.
Yeah, a little bit. He was in traffic
there, but
yeah, and he was in traffic, and their teammate. And the thing was too is catching people today in this race and passing them like was two different things. Like you caught somebody, and it was like you had to take 5-10 laps to kind of work your way around them. We saw that with Bell and Blaney. And so he may have caught him. He also, one, as a teammate, you're going to be respectful there. Two, you're probably not going to be able to drive right away. It was all just, everything's happened. Boom, boom, boom. We didn't know as we're watching this, oh, this could be interesting. This could be a fuel thing. I was like, oh, he's out of fuel, done. And it was just, so 73 seems high, but what the hell do I know? Cause I'm on this wrong way bender.
You're right. Yeah,
but
I wish I had gone lower, honestly.
I'm gonna say 65, but yeah. I just don't think the racing really was largely good. Like it wasn't. We didn't see many green flag passes. A lot of the passes were strategy laden. And the other point I think I want to note, and I made a note of this, the one thing that really jumped out to me that I didn't like was there was guys who were on 30 lap older tires, and they were able to run away. And it took Bell. Bell eventually was able to kind of catch them. But that shouldn't be the case. Like if you're on 30 lap older tires, than the guy who's got four fresh tires and has the fastest race car. Clearly, like that should be no match, right? That's what we've talked about. And like the driver should be able to like, I'm going to the front, I'm gonna pass all these guys, and it wasn't that case. And so I think at the end of the day, I think it's gonna be much lower than 73, and I'm just gonna go 65 to hedge.
All right, yeah. As you were talking there, I feel like I went too high, and this is gonna break my streak. But anyway, yeah, it's I think you made a good pick there. 65 for you, 73 for me.
I'm doing something I tell you never to do, which is read your comments. And I'm looking at my comments, and people are not happy about me talking waivers again.
Oh, you're reading your replies on Twitter.
I shouldn't.
Right now?
Yeah. Well, they blew up, and I'm like, what is going on here? Did I miss something? And then I just, oh no, people are listening to the show, obviously, and they're reacting. So.
Oh, well, that's going to be exciting for me to look at after this.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody. Good job. Proud of you guys.
I'm actually mad at myself today because we called today. You called me today, and we were talking about some stuff, and we got into this, and I like we got into it, like we're having this debate, like you could have taken that, and I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, no, I should have put a lid on this thing and saved it for the show.
Yeah, but you got even madder on this than you did. I think by me arguing with you earlier on the phone, you had your points ready to go, and you were all fired. This is the most fired up Jordan Bianchi rant ever. Now, I mean, you were extremely wrong, but it was still a great rant. So kudos to you for.
I've taken a lot of notes. I had my notes ready last week. I had my notes ready this week.
I was personally. Now I know the feeling of when you have gotten me on the rant, and you see me go off, and I watch your face back on a replay, and you're like, "Haha, I did it." When I got you jabbed there and you were like, and I took a sip of my water, I was like, oh, here we go. Don't
call him. Just don't call Kyle Larson a martyr. Let's just stop with that.
Is that what I should title the episode? Is that what you're saying?
Martyr status.
Martyr status.
Oh,
all right.
That's funny.
Wow. Okay. Well, back at the track for me, the next two here, but guess what? One of those next two, it's a reunion with Jordan Bianchi, our first race back together since Daytona.
Is that right? Wow.
Yes. I mean, I saw you briefly in Charlotte for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Vote. That was the first time I'd seen you since Daytona, but we have not covered a race together since the Daytona 500.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Wow.
So that will be Iowa.
It'll be fun.
Inaugural race in Iowa in 2 weeks. Sonoma next week. Got some road course racing and a repave going on.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
In all seriousness, I know there's been a lot of talk. I want to make sure we're clear. I actually do think it's going to be fine. From the conversation we've had with people, it seems like any issues they've had have been resolved, and I would expect that everything is going to go smoothly in Sonoma.
Yeah. And then Father's Day with who I would not like to spend Father's Day with my children. I would much rather spend it with Jordan Bianchi, who hates children. Yeah. What a beautiful thing, right?
I look forward to seeing you. I wish it was mutual, but hey, great. Thanks. Make me feel special.
Well, if you end up being on the right side of this waiver thing,
it's so funny.
I'm going to be very bitter. So I don't know.
I thought about you so much last week because I will say, like when we had the conversation on Monday morning, we recorded Monday morning, and at that time I knew that there were some hurt feelings. Like I knew, but I didn't realize like
not between us.
No. Yeah, I knew there was some hurt feelings. Yeah,
or NASCAR.
Yeah.
Not Kyle Larson. He doesn't care.
Yeah, NASCAR. Yeah, let me. Thank you. Yeah, let me clarify. I think there were some hurt feelings. I knew there were some hurt feelings on NASCAR side, and I did not. But I will say, like, I did not know to what degree. Now I thought they're kind of maybe going to let him sweat a little bit and play this out for a couple days, or but I didn't know to the level it was going to go at that time. And then as this unfolded during the week, and we're talking to people and reporting on this and these kind of things, and you're like, oh, this is much more realistic than we maybe initially thought, right? Like this could conceivably happen. It did cross my mind, like, oh man, Jeff's reaction to this, it's gonna be great. And I get to do a giant I told you so.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I thought about this too. Like I already saw some people on Twitter go, oh, is it possible Jordan Bianchi could have been right? Here's the thing. He's not right. Even if the decision is not what it is, they're all wrong. Jordan and NASCAR are wrong. It doesn't make them right just because you guessed correctly what they would say, but you still don't think they're going to do it. So
we'll see. I'll let you know. I mean, well, listen, I'll be in the conversation. They're going to take this podcast. Obviously, my opinion obviously carries a lot of weight with them.
Geez.
So we'll see the decision that we reach. I'll let you guys know in due course.
All right. Listen, I really hope we're not talking about this next week. Oh, we do have one final question.
All right.
Evan McKee in our YouTube chat is just wondering, can we get an update on how the wedding went down? We teased at the top of the show.
Sure.
You almost got uninvited from this wedding.
Yep.
You were the best man. Somehow you still went, even though they were angry at you, as you said on the podcast.
I hadn't talked to him in a month.
Hadn't talked. So how did you salvage this, Jordan? The hero that you are. I
didn't apologize because I wasn't wrong. I'm still waiting for my apology. I did send the bride some flowers. No card or anything. Just sent her some flowers. But I came through. I will tell you a story quickly. The wedding was fine. It was whatever it was, whatever. Like, I told him, like, you know what, your first wedding is a good opportunity to kind of realize what you want your second wedding to be. And so true story. We were driving to do some pictures and everything. And one of the people in the car forgot to close the hatch of the SUV. And so we pull out, and I wasn't driving, wasn't my fault or anything, but we were pulling out of the parking lot on this busy highway and stuff starts flying because the hatch opens up because it hadn't been secured enough. Thank God the cooler full of adult beverages did not fall out. It almost did. But all sorts of other stuff we needed for the wedding was like scattered all over the road. And everybody's like, oh, and the car's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I'm like, settle down, calm down, pull around, pull over the shoulder. I got this. So I hop out of the car and I'm literally like playing Froggers, like cars are like buzzing by me and I'm like picking up different stuff. There was a time and I'm grabbing like different stuff we need. Like my buddy's phone charger was there. There was some other stuff
jumping across a highway or something.
I'm literally walking, like running onto a highway and grabbing stuff and then running back to the shoulder and then running back out there. And then, I'm like going, this is like in stages. So I'm like grabbing stuff, running back to the shoulder, grabbing stuff. And at one point I start to run out and then I like like bearing down on me and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna win that battle, so I quickly jump back. So I saved the day on that. And then there were some logistical issues in terms of the coordination of the wedding ceremony, like where people were going to stand, and the wedding coordinator, I don't think she's going to listen, so she was over her head, like she was over her skis. She didn't know what she was doing. And I'm like, yeah, we actually need to be doing A, B, C, and D, and we need to be positioned here, here, and here. And so listen, I'm just saying I'm the bestest best man.
Wow. For somebody that hates the idea of marriage, you sure came through.
Well, not all heroes wear capes. Some wear fancy suits.
Well, on Joel Dunlap. Joel Dunlap on YouTube says, if Jordan missed the podcast because he got hit by a car on the highway, would he get a waiver?
Did I promise I was going to be on the podcast?
That's the whole key. All right, everybody. Well, this has been an adventure. Everybody, thanks as always for listening. I don't know if many people are going to want to listen to you after this again, Jordan, but we appreciate it anyway. And we will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See everybody.